right, I'd like to call this meeting of the West South Milwaukee School Board to order. Mr. Euster, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Suzette, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Euster?
Here.
Mr. Keller's excused. Mrs. Carr is attending on Zoom. Mr. Sikich?
Present.
Mr. Burns?
Present.
Mrs. Kaiser? Present. Ms. Deal? Here. Mrs. Justum? Brandon, let me know if Mrs. Justum joins on Zoom, please. And President Lee.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Are there any modifications to the agenda this evening?
I do not have any.
Okay. And we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
So good evening, everyone. I am sitting in for Marty this evening. So the update on the return to in-person learning, we'll have a thorough update next week since we're meeting 2 weeks in a row. And I'm going to jump right into the legislative update. So the governor announced the release of $110 million in federal funds to school districts. This was released on a promise that he had made in the 21-22 biennial budget and when he passed it into law earlier this year to invest more than $100 million. New and additional funding into Wisconsin schools. It is coming to schools as a per pupil basis. So it's $133.72 for each pupil based on the 3-year membership count that we submit to the state of Wisconsin. The governor also took action on a pair of bills that affect K-12 education. He signed Senate Bill 449 into law. As of 2021, Wisconsin Act 109, this allows critical independent mapping data to be submitted in lieu of school blueprints when school districts submit required safety school planning information to the Office of School Safety, and provides up to $2 million in funding to the Department of Justice in the 21-23 biennium budget that must be used to award school grants to assist with submitting critical incident mapping data. The WASB supported Senate Bill 449. The governor vetoed Bill 463. This bill would have required each school board to post on its internet homepage a lengthy and prescriptive list of the learning materials and educational activities used in pupil instruction in the school district, as well as any procedure or policy in effect that applies to that documentation, review, or approval of such learning materials or educational activities. That biographic list would have to be organized by grade level, subject matter, and teacher, updated at least twice a year, and maintained for at least 5 years. Under the bill, any district resident could sue the district to force compliance and could be awarded up to $15,000 in attorney fees. The Wisconsin School Board Association submitted testimony opposing provisions of Senate Bill 463. In our written testimony, it was noted that parents already have a legal right under federal law, the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, to review these materials. Under the federal law, school districts that receive federal funds are required to have policies and procedures in place that allow parents access to instructional materials upon request. And we do have access on our website to those materials and do respond when community members or parents would like to have a further view of any core resources that we use for classrooms, any of the curricular materials that we use. So there's more detail in the posting that you can read. It's right in the board minutes as well as in the posting online. Assembly Education Chair Representative Thiesfeld announced that he will not seek re-election. He has been a member of the Assembly Committee on Education since first being elected in 2010 and the chair since 2015. He announced he will finish with his current term. State Superintendent Dr. Jill Underly made an announcement today based on the ESSER 3 plan that was approved, the Wisconsin ESSER 3 plan that was approved by the U.S. Department of Education. She said, today we received notification that the United States Department of Education has approved 95% of our ESSER 3 application. That means that school districts will begin receiving much needed federal relief in the coming weeks. This support will allow them to pursue innovative approaches to address ongoing challenges presented by the pandemic and to begin the process of addressing the new normal for learners, their families, our educators, and our communities. We at the DPI are committed to working with legislative leaders and the U.S. Department of Education to address this issue. We all share a mutual interest in doing what is best for Wisconsin students, and that means supporting our learners as thoroughly and expeditiously as possible. And those funds were released to school districts through WISE grants this week. The property tax set lowest increase in 2 years. So property taxpayers are in line for smaller increases this month than they saw in the last 2 years, thanks to a bump in school levies, a drop for tech colleges, and a rise in the state tax credit, according to the nonpartisan Wisconsin Policy Forum. So there's some additional information around where you can find information on your property tax bill and all of those things about where we will see it that smaller increases over the last 2 years, according to all of those different reductions. The Assembly Committee is to take up a post-secondary ban on teaching CRT. The Assembly Colleges and Universities Committee today will exec legislation that backers say would ban teaching of critical race theory on UW and tech system college campuses. AB 413 would also prohibit race and sex stereotyping and training provided to employees in both systems. The bill that would impose a similar ban on K-12 schools, AB 411, cleared the Assembly 60-38 in September. Erpenbach won't seek re-election. Longtime Democratic State Senator John Erpenbach, a member of the Finance Committee and the former Senate Minority Leader, announced today that he will not seek re-election in 2022. He is the first Democratic lawmaker to announce plans to retire ahead of the 2022 elections, and he was the first elected to the Senate in 1998, was unopposed for re-election 4 years later. It has been a solidly Democratic seat since. In federal legislation, IDEA Full Funding Act reintroduced in Congress. Federal legislation known as the IDEA Full Funding Act, IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was reintroduced on November 16th. The bill reflects an effort to financially ensure Congress fully meets its long-standing commitment to fund special education services required under the Individuals with Disabilities Act. The federal government releases 95% of Wisconsin's ARPA K-12 COVID relief allocation. The U.S. Department of Ed announced it has approved the release of 95%, nearly $1.4 billion of the ESSER III allocation. ESSER III was provided under the American Rescue Plan Act enacted by Congress in March of 2021. So that is all we have for the legislative update tonight. In district recognitions, DOTKey would like to recognize freshman Shay Smith for being asked to submit a blog post for CISA 1 and the Institute of Personalized Learning. In her blog post, she wrote about her educational journey, including her experiences in project-based learning versus traditional learning. The blog post link is here, so that is in the agenda for you to read. If you have not had an opportunity to read it, Shay did an amazing job on that post. And the following is just one of the powerful lines that Shay wrote. I am happy to spend each day in an ocean of different types of fish where I can feel confident to swim on my own. I am so grateful to have found project-based learning and a school that helps me be the best version of myself. Way to go, Shay. Greg would also like to recognize the staff for their participation in hosting an all-day immersion site from school leaders from a school in St. Louis, Missouri that took place on November 8th. The reps traveling from St. Louis to West Allis, West Milwaukee with the sole purpose of spending a day at DOTKey and seeing and feeling the powerful work that is being done in hopes of taking some of the things they saw and implementing them back at their school. Well done, DOTKey staff. At West Milwaukee, we'd like to thank Kirsten Shellman, Jordan Pollard, Lindsay Nolder, Kate Easton, and Dan Walker, and so many more. After over 500 days and being shut down due to the pandemic, Moana Junior was a huge success. It ran from December 2nd through the 5th at West Milwaukee Intermediate, and it was great to see kids singing and dancing and staff working together to truly see the show go on after all of this time. And that ends the district recognitions.
Is there any updates?
And no other updates or information items at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to item 7, our public comments. As a reminder, everyone who wants to publicly address the board will have 3 minutes to do so. You must state your name and your address before beginning your comments. And if there's anyone online who would like to address the board, you can do so by filling out the form. The link is in the chat right now. And I will call on you to do so, and we'll switch over the audio so that we can hear you. So, with that being said, we have Mr. Mikolajczyk.
Joe Mikolajczyk, 3355 South Russell Court, New Berlin. Number one, this community of taxpayers does not need or want a huge building referendum, which started out at $229 million, which is $32,000 per student. This is a ridiculous amount of money, and taxpayers cannot afford this or lesser amounts you may be currently considering. Enrollment is down, and this referendum is not necessary. Number two, because of declining enrollment, all the buildings the district owns are not needed. Sell these buildings. Use the proceeds from the building sales if you and taxpayers think some building modifications are necessary. Number three, another point regarding selling the buildings, I have an important question to ask. What is the best use for an unneeded school building that will give the taxpayers, which by the way, own these buildings, not the school board, the most bang for their buck? The best use of a school building is for a school. Mr. Unelected Educrat Lexman, in fact, stated at the last board meeting, we can't sell them to a school provider. I would ask why not? And I know why. Because the school system does not want any competition to the current system, because you know competition is bad for an underperforming school system. And make no mistake, the West Dallas, West Milwaukee school system is underperforming fiscally and educationally. Number four, I have asked for a financial analysis at least 5 times why this board continues to use the WEA Trust for health insurance. All I get is crickets. I strongly think an analysis has never been done, and this is fiscally irresponsible, with no consideration of the taxpayers and complete caving to the teachers' union. This is disgusting, and you should be ashamed of how you treat the people you are supposed to represent. Number 5, you have or will receive $23 million
10 seconds, Mr.
in
Mikolajczyk.
federal COVID funding. You need to seriously consider how you're going to spend this money and spend it better than you have in the past. You've been very fiscally irresponsible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mikolajczyk. Seeing no other people sign up for public comments, and I didn't see anyone posting anything in the chat, we're going to close public comments at this time, and we will move on to item 8, the board reports. So starting with item 8.1, reviewing our board calendar. So today is December 13th, and we have a regular Board of Education meeting, immediately followed by 2 workshops. One, a college and career readiness student services workshop, and also a financial stability and efficiency facility master plan draft referendum question and update to the capital improvement trust fund. Next Monday, December 20th at 6 p.m., we have another regular Board of Education meeting, followed by 2 additional committee workshops, college and career readiness, charter schools and grant requirements, as well as an employee engagement and culture, current staffing, and configurations. And then immediately following that, we'll have a closed session meeting. Then from December 22nd through January 2nd, we have winter break, so we hope that everyone will enjoy their time away with family during the holidays. And then on Monday, January 10th at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting. So now we'll move on to item 8.2, our board committee reports, starting with 8.2.1, our communication and community relations. Ms. Kaiser?
Sure. At the November 22nd Communications and Community Relations meeting, we discussed the school showcase that occurred on November 15th. We would like to thank Hoover, Frank Lloyd Wright, and Longfellow schools for their informational presentations. Our next school showcase is February 21st, and it's going to be a packed house with Walker, Pershing, Central, Madison, and Nathan Hale. We'll continue to limit presentations to 10 minutes per rotation. Next, Dr. Stewart shared amazing data growth in social media analytics, including likes and looks. In some categories, we have over 1,000% increase, and which has been a testament to her method of social videos and how she presents things. Finally, the district shared a wonderful video the day before Thanksgiving called I'm Thankful For. I highly recommend everyone check it out. You can see it on the district website. And you can see the beautiful product created for this video behind me tonight. And that's all.
Awesome, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Kristen or the committee? Or any questions they'd like them to consider at maybe their next meeting? I'll make sure Jane doesn't have any. Jane or Heather, I should say. Heather's there now. All good? Okay, all right. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to, sorry, I gotta get back to my, too many screens here. I need two. Item 8.2.2, employee engagement and culture, which was gonna be Mr. Keller, who's not here, so,
It'll be me.
all right. Please, continue.
Oh, sure. All right. So the Employee Engagement and Culture Committee had our last meeting on Tuesday, November 16th. And at that meeting, we received a recommendation from legal counsel regarding the harassment and sexual harassment definitions that are in our Neola policies, 2266 and 3362. And we're having, community members are requesting changes to those definitions. And so we're reviewing, and we'll be looking for a recommendation at our next meeting, and then we'll forward that to legal counsel for review. And then the committee also reviewed a report received from KinderCare Corporation on the requirements needed to open a dedicated daycare center. KinderCare shared a couple of pieces of information, including that a dedicated center would cost at least $2 million, not to include the cost of the building site itself. It's estimated that the district would lose at least $300,000 annually for a system like that, and that the district would need to guarantee enrollment of at least 120 children. Companies that successfully implement a dedicated daycare center like that have an employee populations of over 12,000. And currently there are several KinderCare locations in West Allis, and that would increase the competition between them. So KinderCare indicated that they would not partner with us in this endeavor. They did present a proposed discount program, which committee members have requested the district to just have a survey of current staff to discover whether or not there's interest. And then the Human Resources team will work with the Communications Department to distribute a survey after the holiday break. And then the HR team presented a report regarding the district's continued efforts to improve the diversity of the staff, and the committee review of the results of the biannual EEO5 data for comparison. The district has made some improvements and will continue to develop strategies to continue moving forward and diversifying our staff. So our next committee meeting will be on January 4th of 2022 at 5:30 by Zoom. That's all I
Great,
have.
thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Brendan or the committee?
When you guys are discussing the daycare, have you guys thought about vouchers or something on that line, or are you still in the beginning phases of?
I think that oh wait, can I respond to that? Is that?
Yeah, it's part of the
okay.
committee stuff.
All right, so.
Yep.
So I think that that's along what they offered the discount program. So I think that's kind of what they're looking for
Oh,
the
okay.
voucher piece. And so I think we're exploring a few more avenues, but right now, as far as a dedicated center, that's pretty too costly right now. So.
Any other questions? Jane or Heather online, I'm looking at you too. You're good? I just had one question. Was KinderCare the only, group that was considered? I know there's a lot of different facilities in the area.
That was the only one that was considered for the moment because of both our awareness of them and their being in the area for them. We didn't
I see.
look into other ones because we figured that since they seem to be one of the more prevalent groups here, that they would be able to offer the biggest discounts
I
for
see.
cooperative venture. But no, we have not done other ones.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much for that. So we'll move on to item 8.3, board member reports of community events. Any board members want to report any events they were attended? Amy?
So I have two of them. So first off, I want to thank, I wrote notes. So I want to thank the staff over at Lane. I was able to attend the Lane Band and Choir concert on December 9th. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Mankey, Ms. Franklin, and Mr. Beeksma, who were the main people there. It was a great concert. Lots of families there, lots of family support. It was it was a really great event, so I just wanted to do a shout out to them. And then I also wanted to just say a big thank you to our, to Shelley Strasser and the rec department. This past Saturday, again, we had the Target experience through the Zeman Family Foundation. And if you're not familiar with that, we have families that are invited to bring their students to Target, and they are allowed to go around and pick gifts up to $75. It's a great experience for the kids. I was actually able to be there. I saw how happy they were. It was great to see, you know, tons of our school staff there, our rec department staff, and then there was a lot of volunteers. I know I saw Hale, you know, baseball or basketball players and such. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who was able to participate that and just bring a lot of holiday cheer to our families.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any comment or community events they wanted to talk? Jeff?
I'd just like to give a little shout out to Shelley for her participation and, excuse me, leadership for the West Allis Christmas Parade. It was quite a safe parade after the ordeal that was out in Waukesha. Any numbered street that crossed Greenfield Avenue was blocked off with a big front-end loader or garbage truck. There's no way a vehicle would have made it in there, and I think that also calmed some of the residents that were there. But that was a big talk, and then a thank you to the city workers that had to drive all those vehicles, because I heard there were over 60 vehicles that they used to block roads, so that's quite an undertaking. Hopefully that's not the new normal.
Right. Yes, I like to echo Jeff's sentiments about that too at the parade, and also want to thank Suzette and Amanda for helping with the items that we as board members were able to hand out during the parade. So thank you for getting all that stuff put together, and it was a whirlwind, but we handed out most of it, so. So thank you for that. Is there anyone else that has any items that they want to discuss? Just making sure nothing from Jane and Heather. Okay, so then we will move on to our consent agenda. So we have item 9.1, the minutes from our November 22nd meeting. We have item 9.2, our employment summary, and item 9.3, our supplementary contracts. Does anyone have anything they need to have separated out? And I can't see if Gina, dang it. No? Heather, you're good too, hopefully? Can't see her. I think we lost Heather. No? Okay. I just can't see her. Okay. Assuming none, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Jane says thumbs up, and can't see Heather. I'm not sure where Heather went. But there's Heather, but I can't see her.
She flashed up when we all said aye.
Okay, all right, so that passes. All right, so let's move on to our one action item for this evening, item 10.1 to 2022-2023 budget calendar. Mr. Duff, welcome.
Thank you for that welcome. I'm Mark Duff. I'm filling in for Caitlin while she's on maternity leave, so I'm looking forward to this temporary opportunity. So Caitlin gave me an easy one on the first agenda item. It's the budget development calendar, and she's the one that compiled it, and I made no changes to it. So this is, so she did go over this, discussed it with the Financial Stability and Effectiveness Committee.
Efficiency, yep.
And discuss this. There's relatively no changes to the calendar substantial changes to the calendar over the prior year, other than just some updates to the dates. The budget process is right around the corner, and there'll be board workshops starting at the end of the month on February 28th. And that's right around when Caitlin will be back. So I haven't quite figured out if we're gonna be doing that together, if she'll handle it. And then with working all the way through that budget calendar to get the budget ready for board approval, the interim one in June. So I think that's the process that you use, very similar to last year. So we're just asking that you adopt this proposed budget development calendar again.
Yes, some of our historical board members remember we used to have a workshop on this to discuss the dates, and then we would have formal action on it later, but we discussed last year that the workshop was kind of moot because we never changed things except for the actual calendar dates. Everything else is pretty much lockstep as far as when these things are spaced out. So we've made that official change this year, so we just basically look at the calendar and approve it in one fell swoop. So are there any questions or comments regarding this? And if not, I'd look for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, everyone's thumbs up. I can see Heather and Jane. All right, that passes. Okay, so that is the only action item we had today. So we're going to move right into item 11, which are our workshops. Starting out with item 11.1, which is our college and career readiness student services with Ms. Raymer.
Good evening again. We are really excited for tonight. It's been something that's been part of our discussions as a committee for a while in the Life Readiness Committee, as well as kind of that effort to get back to normal for us, which we used to do these kind of round robin workshops where you guys would get to learn about the different services that we offer throughout our district. And sometimes we had them be much larger and then they would go on for much longer, but we're trying to break them out. That was something that came out of our committee into a couple of smaller segments so that you get a little bit more time to kind of more in-depth learn from the service providers and the people that we have in our schools. So tonight is dedicated to our student services work. So we have representatives from St. A's and PSG who do some of our mental health work in our schools. We have a team of counselors and social workers who will talk about kind of our services that we provide through student services for K through 12th grade. We have a table of our school psychs to share some of the work that they're doing. And then we also have Larry Lineberger, who's going to sit at our school safety table just to talk about some of the safety work we do in schools and the protocol work and all of those sorts of things that we dedicate quite a bit of time and effort and dollars to through some of the DOJ grants that we've had and other grants that we've received as a district. And then the last table will be some new work that we ventured into in the last couple of years. It comes from an individual named Ross Green around the collaborative problem-solving model. So it's how do we identify problematic behaviors. We do a lot of empathy work with the student and the family. We get to whatever the lagging skill or the unmet need is, and then we develop a plan with that student and the family and the school in order to see those skills that are needed to be developed get developed over time. And we have had 3 staff dedicate more hours than we ever thought it would take. Laura and Alyssa are here tonight, and they'll laugh. They'll tell you a little bit about that. They're getting certified by Ross Green and his organization to be able to train people in-house. And it has meant that they have videotaped themselves a number of times. They attend these weekly sessions. They have had to have somebody else train them, have them videotape themselves doing one of these, what we call a Plan B with a student. You'll learn about that at that station. And then submit all of that and do some kind of public demonstrations of learning. So it is project-based learning at its finest. But our 3 educators, Danny Daly, who isn't with us tonight, Alyssa Johnson, who started that work before she became the principal at Pershing and thankfully was willing to continue, and then Laura Sage, who's our lead school psych. So they're going to talk a little bit around what that work is, the teachers that we're training to do that work now, and kind of some of the impact that it's had for students and families at the school sites, which has been pretty tremendous. So because we have 6 stations tonight and 6 board members, you actually can each go to a station on your own. I know, all by yourselves. And we'll stay at each station for about 5 minutes, and then we'll rotate just so you can get some ideas, 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll rotate through so you'll get the opportunity to hear from each station before the end of the workshop.
Okay.
You
Girls
can
on a
pick
mission.
anywhere.
Oh, yeah,
you'd
yeah,
like.
it's ready to go.
Bill's like, I gotta go.
Well, I just want to say, for anyone who's on Zoom, you might not be able to hear exactly what's going on. We're going to be in different tables, but we'll come back for the next workshop, which is going to be talking about the referendum question, just for those who are watching via Zoom. You can probably see us, but not hear us.
That's a good thing. Is Mark going after me then? Explain that. Yeah, we never saw a slide or anything.
Bill's pocket is having an Good job, we gotta recognize the problem now. So they like a live demo, so this is really amazing.
It doesn't look like it's agendized in any order.
Thank you, ma'am.
I guess it could, yeah. One slide.
Especially nice to be able to sort of like single multifaceted.
I can just call him too if you want. Want me to stick him on box? He just kept calling us. Figure. Hey Steve, we actually just picked up the morning. How you doing? We'll be fine.
This one guy says, often be sorry about those last two quarters or two periods or 2 quarters that I've seen why this year and years is probably awesome. So that I was pretty impressed with that. My daughter Mary and we were talking about it because I had never heard of school.
That's perfect. Mark and I were just talking. Do you want to do the Fund 46 presentation before or after our slides? After. Yep, that makes sense.
It's too general, but they're from the mass area. They're from northern Illinois. So I'm not too sure. Make sure that they're still making the transition. To like, Leslie about the stupid, you know. And they would always be nice. Back then, that was amazing. They would always be nice.
Okay. Are you able to share that by Zoom, or do you want me to have it on my screen? Sounds great. Steve, you feeling all right yet? Yeah. What are you guys doing in terms? I think some of it I don't know. Also, about just how we approach things. It's not I can probably get the words. I'll get that in my packet right now. And you want me to roll right into that after our budget slide and then there's less transition, or do you want to go us to you and then back to us? What would you prefer?
He's just like staring.
Yeah, that's fair. And that'll actually expose that gap anyway. That's the 10 million. Okay. All right. Perfect. I think we're on the same page. All right. Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Barriers that kept them from getting their home issues there because of past
Okay, I did not specify.
It's harder when there's three edits.
People to ask questions. I just hope my rooms At least the basketball team's
Marquise went to grab Brandon to help out.
I have the ballot language, yep, and then Steve said he was going to be able to share through Zoom the rest of it. So I think if we keep it on mine, we should be good, I think. Oh, look at that. What's that? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I think I'm assuming we're pretty much next up.
He's on right now. They're muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so this afternoon we get a 2 o'clock presentation, and they just sent another invite with an agenda, and the agenda said location, Ingrid Anderson's office, and then so we run down there, wait for our partner to show up. He gets there like 10 minutes early, and they're like, this is offline. Oh man. So we said, all right, well, his office, you know James from JCP Construction, James Phelps?
Yep.
So we went up to his office, which was pretty close, and it was like, we're like grabbing wires and like getting an echo back and forth, and we had all these nice books, and it was like, okay. So everybody take a deep breath.
And hope they're running a little behind to go to ours.
It was nice though. They gave us an agenda of what their scope questions were. So I'd already went through and like moving all of our answers and stuff. So they're like, well, you guys made up all the time that the other people were like going back and forth. You got it all organized. And
That's good.
So
That's good.
it's like, yeah, we're like a pilot. We make it up in the air, right? So I was like, oh, it's just frustrating. It's a project called Thrive On King. It's adapted news with Royal Capital.
Yeah. Okay. You know, you guys are in, or you're
Where it's us and one other firm right now.
Okay.
So yeah, those are
That looks like a
always-
big project. It looks really cool.
Yeah. You know the historic piece. You guys do a lot of historic stuff too, right?
We're doing more and more. Yeah. Our guys out of Iowa actually do quite a bit of it.
So I get it, but
The tax credits are crazy confusing.
But there's a part of me that is like, I don't understand the value of keeping crappy wooden window and cleaning it up, putting a storm window on the inside versus
Replicating
getting a
that
new
window. Yep.
one that costs less, that is triple glazed, that must help with your energy, right? Like
That isn't going to fail over time, and that you have to continually paint and maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So that's the piece where,
And I think that's part of it is really just the federal tax credits that they get have all these super rigid requirements associated with them.
and then part of it, so that building was gimbals, and it does have some really cool elements, right? And in the 50s they added on, and it's like brick, strip, aluminum,
Oh.
crappy. That's historic too.
Because it's connected to the.
I'm like,
Is that building on the southwest corner of that intersection of MLK and what street would it be? Okay.
they are now? Okay.
They were the
Oh, we asked, he said they were off. All right, thank you.
We're behaving.
like, your pictures are really good on
Worth dinner tonight.
all of these. I see Kristen, I saw Kristen up there.
I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, that's neat.
It was just simple life though. You know? You didn't have any responsibilities. We'd walk to Metro Market every day.
Thank you very much, John, for coming. I appreciate it. That was really helpful. Thank you. All right, we'll see you later. If I don't see you, have a nice holiday, John.
If other people are just,
You know what I'm sick of?
what?
I'm trying.
You know what I'm sick of? What?
I was kind of just talking to myself, but since you guys are listening, I'm sick of sickness. Like any little like headache or like it's just like God, I'm just so tired of this.
But yeah, I know.
We're wrapping back up.
Oh, I was sick last week. When like Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. My nose was stuffed. I had some cough and stuff. You know, I had total.
Yeah.
Like 7 months ago. So it wasn't like I didn't feel that same thing.
Yeah.
But then last Wednesday I was still sick. Why? No. So I don't. I didn't. And but it's like now that's just where your head goes.
I didn't think I had it. My husband always gets the flu once a year. We're both vaccinated. This was a couple.
No, there's some
I think we had it. We didn't even know. To be honest, I didn't because I got it from him and because he was like, "Oh, I think I have the flu." He gets it like every year. He gets his bad flu. It was like in October, and then like
I didn't know
2
she
days
wanted to
later,
stay for
he's like, "Oh, I can't smell it." Like it hit him like really late, and I was like, "Well, I'm already done with mine." And I've been walking around like. Because I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, it's a sniffle. He gets this every year. He always does this. He's always, And we didn't have a fever, which is what I thought was like the main, I don't know, whatever. It's just all just so. Just done. And people are just, I feel like it's just making people nastier and nastier, and let me just always just fight with each other.
I'm coming back, I'm sorry.
Just got Jeff.
Teachers love to talk to teachers.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. I had this scientist guy behind me that pushed me along.
I got new people to talk to tonight. It's great. They haven't heard all my stories yet. See my new ink.
Is Steve first? Who's first?
Inkwell Tattoo. They're right across from City Hall. New guy, amazing.
Right where,
So is that,
Next to Papa John's.
Next to Papa John's.
is that a finished product, or are you gonna do
No,
some
we're gonna get some shading in there. I can
Different
afford 2 hours at a
colors?
time.
Right.
That's first?
So I figured, yeah, you gotta get some colors in there or something?
No,
No,
like,
or
like
just
grayscale,
different-
grayscale shading.
So as we wrap up our workshop, a couple of things that I just want to share with you all about kind of some of the services that we're able to offer and just some of the staff who support our learners every single day. I have never ever worked with a group of employees whose answer to everything is, sure, we can figure that out, and sure, we can do that, and how about if we try this? And this year in particular, where there's a nationwide shortage of positions and counselors and social work and school psych, our team has come together in this incredible way to figure it out and to take on roles that maybe weren't the ones they thought they were taking on and do all of those pieces. So it is an absolute honor for me to get to support this team every single day, and I'm really proud of the work that they do on behalf of our kids all the time. It really makes such a huge difference. Any other comments from school board members before we invite them to stay for the next workshop or invite them to go and enjoy their evenings?
Just thank you so much for taking the time. I spoke with all of you as a teacher myself. This is one of the most challenging right now social emotional needs for students I've ever seen in my career. And we're all drowning just a little bit, but as student support staff, you're just amazing, and I can't thank you enough.
I just thought we had, every table, I had really great conversations, so that's really kind of cool when we do these types of things, is to have those
types of conversations versus just being talked to and given some type of presentation. So I do really enjoy just sitting down and talking, and every table I had a great conversation, so thanks.
Because they're social worker and counselors, they talk.
Right. I'm not usually at a loss
They know how
for
to draw
words,
your
but-
comments out, Bill, right? So that's their job.
They're gonna analyze this now.
All right, so that'll close out this workshop for this evening, and then again, you'll see our Life Readiness Committee coming back in January with one around some of our curricular areas, and then we'll do another one in February with our supports for our students with special needs, as sometimes you guys do get some of those questions as well. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll then move on to our second workshop, 11.2 Financial Stability and Efficiency. There are a number of things that we're going to go through with this, and we're going to start with Ray.
I think Steve.
Yeah, we're going to
Steve
turn to
jumping
Steve
in
to
first?
begin
Sorry.
this evening.
Okay.
Steve's on Zoom.
Unmute.
And then,
Can you hear me okay?
yes.
Yes.
Now he can
Okay.
hear us.
At our last meeting, we discussed the latest design of the one comprehensive high school and the associated cost. And I believe we were around $170 million at that time. Tonight, we're providing you with the latest design and associated cost. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt Wolford from Bray Architects and Mark Lillistan from C.G. Schmidt for their presentation.
Good evening. Good to see all of you again. We have a brief presentation tonight because it's really an update and just kind of introducing some revisions from the last concept that was shared. So the plans you have in front of you and the concept up on the screen, if you remember correctly, we had just over $1 million gap in the last concept to where we had not decided, but collectively we're targeting for the referendum and potential improvement project. And so through that process, what we did, and you'll see on the site plan, I'll zoom in a little bit, really the only change you're going to see on the site plan from the last go-around is we used to have a bit more building addition at the northwest corner. The academic piece grew a little bit further west. So you'll see when we get into the building plan, we were able to actually get more teaching and learning space in a smaller footprint, which reduced the cost of the addition related to the project, which really closed our deficit that we were looking to close. But it also actually allowed for more parking and more drop-off drive to be added. So perfect win-win situation where more educational space, lower cost, and a bit more drop-off in parking at what will be our main entrance throughout the school day. So that's really the only change you're going to see on the site plan is in that northwest corner. Slightly longer drive, slightly smaller building footprint. On the first floor plan, so page 2 of your handout, the big change was we previously had an additional, what we were calling light courts. Remember these internal courtyard areas that are going to be teaching and learning space that are providing natural light to many of the adjacent classrooms and labs associated with them. We had one more of those in the prior concept on this is technically the northwest side or the lower left-hand side of your plan. We had one more of those light court areas and realized that we really didn't need it as we studied this further to get natural light to every space. And so we were able to balance that by saving square footage, increasing the site. So really the only tweak you're seeing here is a slightly revised lower left-hand corner of your plan, which is the northwest corner if you rotate the building with north being up. And then we tweaked how we were going to renovate very slightly. And then on the second floor, same thing, lower left-hand corner of the plan, second floor mirrors the first floor with labs and classrooms. And we had a very affordable location for one additional lab above some classroom space on the first floor over in the tech ed STEM area. So again, super high level, really no change, and actually slightly more teaching and learning space, lowered that budget, which Mark is going to touch on. And we feel like we are still right on track for the educational goals, both quantity and quality of space that we set out this discussion focusing on. So that's Mark to summarize the budget.
All right. In the upper, if you have your pie charts in front of you, in the upper left-hand side, the square foot piece, the orange pie piece, that's the classroom edition. That's what changed since when we last met. Easy for me to say. But there's about a 3,000 square foot reduction in the classroom square footage. So that was reduced. So our overall square footage is now just under 500,000 square feet. and it did reduce the budget, so we're down now at $159.8 million for a total budget. So those creative pieces that Matt just talked about really did help drive some cost out of the project to get us to this point.
The other piece we've spent time on behind the scenes is working with the district's legal counsel at Quarles and Brady to draft what is called referendum language or a referendum resolution. There's a number of parts to this. The first, 4 sentences or so are the legalese required to state that you would be given as a district the authority to issue bonds in an amount, and this is important, not to exceed. So that language is critically important as we have a conversation with the community when the conversation is of what if it goes over budget, you're going to borrow more money. No, we legally cannot borrow more money than the $149,800,000, what you see here. So remember, there's about a $10 million difference between the bond, the potential referendum amount, and the current budget for the project. And Mark and Steve will touch on that in a few minutes as well. And then that is all followed by what's called the purpose language. So the purpose language is another important piece because it describes what you're going to accomplish and what you're going to use the dollars for. But it also means you are limited to only spending the dollars on that. So to use an extreme, if the community says, yes, they agree to this, you couldn't go out and build a $100 million athletic complex with these dollars, right? You have to use it for the purpose that is described within the body of the language here. The goal is to be general enough to understand and let the community understand what is included in the project, while also giving you the flexibility as the plan massages over the years of design and engineering to make little tweaks here and there, while still staying in alignment with, what is called the purpose language. So take some time if you want to read that. I think as a group leadership team, and the attorney feels like this is in a pretty good place. But the goal, if you agree to proceed, would be to work with the attorney to put formal language on the agenda. There's a series of formalities with how the language is put on the agenda, how long it's advertised for, the specific process and steps you have to take. So the attorney will work with you and the board secretary to make sure that all of that is done correctly. We just wanted to share this with you in advance so that on the evening of adoption, it's not the first time you're seeing it. So Steve, to turn it back to you or Mark for the next piece of the presentation.
Unless you have questions.
Yeah, I guess we could do questions too now if you'd rather.
Your
Shirley.
paperwork here says 159.8.
They're about the design, the budget, or the referendum question before we move on to Fund
gotcha.
46.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, we'll take questions here. So the question was the one.
Never mind.
I guess
The difference between the 159.8 and the 149.8 is the contribution that we are taking out of proceeds from the sale of this building at one point and other dollars that the district will dedicate to the project.
And I just want to kind of double check something, like the current pool that's there will remain until future hopeful changes to the facilities?
That is correct, and the budget includes dollars because we're putting whole new electrical systems and mechanical systems in the building to make sure that the pool is still functional, operational.
Okay.
But as I think Steve noted in our last meeting, it's the best pool you have, so there isn't any real imminent, very specific, expensive needs that are known right now.
Okay.
So the goal is to put enough in to keep it active, but not so much that when the time is right to put the new pool on, you haven't over-invested in that space.
As the mom of a swimmer, thank you.
Bill?
So, we want to do this, we say yes. What are the next steps as far as marketing, putting together presentation, that sort of stuff?
So we will be working with the district team. I believe Dr. Lexman mentioned Joe Donovan's name last time in the interview. And then both of our organizations do a great deal of this work as well, and we've got communications and graphic design staff as well who are going to be assisting. So really, you think January, February, March. January will be a lot of strategic planning in terms of the message, in terms of getting all the materials ready. February and March are really active in terms of community listening sessions, engagement work with staff, parents, non-parents. So you'll really see, that's why the language matters. But when the campaign and the informational work that the group is going to do is done well, most people that are voting have seen this language, understand the language. They're not reading it for the first time in the booth. They know if they're in support or not by the time they get there. So that's why, if it's possible, the ideal scenario is to formally adopt here in December so that January and we're off to the races after the holiday break is over. If that's not possible, we'd ask it's the earliest meeting you can in January so that we can really hit the ground running for exactly what you described.
And just to update the board, Marty and Amanda have already met with that group just to understand what the scope of that work would look like and what do we do versus what do they support us to do, just so we could get some initial understanding. And I had a follow-up meeting with the board from MATC 2 weeks ago, I think, and they are very interested in partnering with us on a lot of the CTE spaces. And by the way their funding works, they can outfit equipment and they can provide teachers that are cross-trained to be able to certify classes in both places. So they are very, very interested in partnering with us around particular career pathways that we could use some co-utilized space together, and then also very interested in how they could support sharing a message of support for how important this is for our local community from both their end and from our end. So we did have that follow-up meeting with them as well.
I was gonna say something that's very heavy in the community right now is safety in the schools, and so that needs to be also addressed as to anything that this type of high school can provide for additional safety to students. I think it needs to be at the forefront for a lot of folks right now.
Yeah, and you will note that the first two words under
yeah,
the
that's why I brought it
description
up.
of
Yes.
what is being done are safety and security. This is a nuance. We'll talk in detail. If the community supports this, we'll probably want to make sure we can go into closed session with the board to have conversations about all the different little pieces and parts so that we're not publicly advertising all the things you're doing to keep your students safe. So happy to have conversations offline about what some of those theoretically would be, but we want to be a little careful how publicly we share those right now.
Thank you.
Well, let's hear what Steve has to say.
Steve, it's up to you.
I'll go on to the Fund 46, Long-Term Capital Improvement Trust Fund, if that's okay with you, President Lee.
Yep.
So Steve, are you gonna share
I'm gonna
this?
try to share my screen then.
Perfect.
I'm not in the Zoom. We better do this. I'm not in the Zoom.
Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
No.
No.
You have to hook it back up to that.
Yeah,
But help
it's
is
gotta
on the
go
way.
back into that one. Yeah, Brendan's coming.
Are you able to see it?
Oh, hit one.
Not yet, Steve. Brendan's fixing it. There we go.
Yep, looks like you are now. Okay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these first few pages because this is a summary and a repeat of what we talked about last time, but there's some parts at the end that that'll deal with the resolution and the new long-term plan. So I just wanted to make sure that there was still the context for everybody if they didn't happen to see it last time. So the board originally created this on October 23rd, 2017. It has to have a comprehensive improvement plan, and it has to be for a minimum of 10 years. And the funds can only be used for the purposes identified in the approved plan. And initially, it was set up for the funding of Field 1, which is the football field at WAC, and then Field 2, which is the soccer field. Last time, we also went over some of the limitations. One of them, most noted, was that the fund has to be in effect for at least 5 years and 1 day before you can access the money that's in there. Given the date that the board originally passed this, that would be October 24th of 2022. That would be the first day that we'd be able to legally use the funds for the identified purposes in the long-term plan. And again, you can't loan the money for other purposes to other funds, and it has to be physically deposited in a separate account. Last time we also went over, excuse me, the initial funding. And that was 200,000 a year for Field 1 replacement and 125,000 a year for Field 2. And so we're estimating that at the end of this current fiscal year, we would have $1 million set aside for redoing Field 1, which is the football field, and $625,000 for Field 2. And then throughout this process, there's also been some additional funding that the board has designated to Fund 46. And you can see that in the future CIP projects. And that totals about $4,300,000. So all told, we're estimating at the end of this fiscal year, there would be just shy of $6 million in Fund 46. So one of the things we need to do to continue with Fund 46 is create a revised 10-year capital improvement plan for Fund 46. And as we talked about last time, that there is some flexibility with those projects. The projects can change, the order of projects can change, the dollar amount that you spend on those projects can change. Also, it's important to note that by setting aside or creating this long-term plan, it doesn't obligate the district to complete these projects, and it doesn't obligate us to use Fund 46 for these projects either. This is just like everything else, it's a plan. And so, we're taking a snapshot of what that plan looks like at one point in time. And as needs change, we can modify that plan. The only contingency is that we need to make sure we have board approval when we change the plan before we spend the money. And then we'll use this to continue to supplement Fund 10 funding of the CIP. And so the next steps, as we talked about, is board approval of the updated long-term capital improvement plan. And that's attachment A of the resolution. I also have it included as the next slide. We need board approval of the resolution to align the long-term plan to the Fund 46 Trust Fund. And the resolution was included in your board documents. And then board consideration of high school facility plan and site and referendum ballot question. And then ESSER $5 million and district $5 million, develop a funding strategy to support the referendum construction plan, which would include site and facility improvements. And we discussed that a little bit last time as well. And then here is what the attachment A looks like. And again, like I said, this is it's a plan. This isn't written in stone. We don't have to do any of these projects. But what I did is I put in some of the reoccurring projects that we do every year. For example, paving, roof repair, and then purchase and installation of security cameras. You see the WAC field replacements are in there as well. So there again, and this has to be for a minimum of 10 years. So the first year of this revised plan is for next fiscal year, and it goes through the 2031-2032 fiscal year. And then that's the end of the presentation. So if there's any questions, please let me know.
All right, so do we understand what this is about? We have Fund 46, we had a plan that was passed, and that was to establish the fund essentially. And the initial reasoning for that was for the replacement of the 2 turf fields. Looks like we're going to be passing a resolution, looking to pass a resolution to essentially extend that plan, so not just limited to the turf field replacement, but then some other things that have been identified by Steve that need to be done in the district over the next 10 years, with the understanding that these are just things that we could do with money that we're putting into this fund, not things that we have to do with money that's in this fund, or we could use other funds to do some of the things on this list. It doesn't matter. That's essentially what we are looking at. So everyone is, Kristen?
And we'll still be able to access that fund at the time it's supposed to be, because wasn't this a fund that had to sit for a number of years and then we can open it?
Yeah, since
Once
its
we
creation.
once we extend it, there's no extension in when we can use it? Okay, thank you.
No.
Yeah, so once we hit that 5-year and 1-day mark, then
It's ours.
we can use that money, and even putting more money into it, it's not like each
Gotcha.
new addition is an additional 5 years.
Okay.
We can use it as we put it in from that point on.
Prior to that 5-year mark, we didn't have that fund. So we opened it, and then the intention is you had to keep it open for 5 years before you could access the
Right.
dollars. And so we didn't previously have one. And so now
Okay.
that we have one, it's a rotating account that we can use.
Okay.
And if I might add, it was created so narrow that was only for those fields. We need to make it so you can use it for the capital improvement plan, for roofing, for pavement, for minor repairs, or, you know, for all the things that are on that list. So
Gotcha.
this gives us that flexibility to use the fund for the capital improvement plan, for, if the referendum passes, for site improvements, different things like that.
Thank
Bill.
you.
So, anytime that we want to withdraw and use this fund for said projects, it's gonna take board approval for each individual project. So there, in that year 22, 23, there's 8 things. So for all 8 things, we'll come to the board for us to approve to spend that money. Is that how I understand, is that the way I understand it?
I'm not as familiar with the
Yep.
process that you have, but
No, I think it's part of when the board approves the overall budget. You guys have to approve the plan where we dedicate the dollars, similar to, you know, when we come back to the board throughout the school year and ask you to amend the current budget to include things like an expansion of this or an expansion of this, depending on where we are in the budget process. Those have not historically, unless they're over a certain dollar amount or a huge investment in one moment in time, come to the board individually for approval. You guys have a workshop with Steve every year, and we approve the capital improvement plan each year. This just expands that one narrow pot of money to include more things. Because right now, the only thing we could spend it on, based on the way the plan was approved, was the turf. And we have more money in it than we had anticipated at the time that we established the fund 5 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, based on where we've decided to dedicate some dollars in our budget to ensure that that can grow in a more healthy manner. So those individual items don't typically always come forward to the board for approval, outside of when you approve the budget summary each time in the board updates, when they're, or excuse me, in the kind of the consent agenda when they come through, and then for those major, large, big things that we have to go out to RFP or bid or all of those things, that all comes to the board.
Yes, I don't think that we've specifically, a board would have to approve the purchases out of those items once, if we pass this resolution. I think the resolution opens up the door for the use of
Yes.
that. I would expect 100% that administration would communicate to us like, oh, we have this money, we have this need, this is what we're thinking, using that money, and just make sure that there was no issues with it. But I don't think it would take official board action to actually say, yes, you can go ahead and expend these funds for replacing the roof on Horace Man or something like that, if that's what was one of the things that we wanted to
So
do.
we're just taking our list of 2 things and expanding it to 8 things.
Yep,
Yes,
as possible uses, as
As
possible
possible
uses.
Right.
uses.
yeah.
Not definite uses, not only can be used for money for that thing. Say we want to use 400,000 from another spot and 400,000 from this spot to make an 800,000, expenditure. That also could be done, but this then allows that you could use some Fund 46 dollars for that purpose. And just as a reminder, that the reason we like Fund 46 is it doesn't count against us for our state aid, which is another reason why we had created the fund. Everything, if we keep it in Fund 10, it can count against us as state aid. We got hurt with that with the building sale and with the OPEB settlement, things like that. Fund 46 is kind of held separate from that, from the state calculation, so that's not a reason why it's a good place to put money, a really good savings account for the district for these bigger type things that we have to do.
And similar to, again, the Fund 10 budget, when we come to the board, we outline specifically, this is the percent we're gonna use on staffing, and then, like this year, for example, we had dedicated some additional dollars to some professional development. Well, if for some reason we aren't going to use those funds for something, we'll come back to the board and say, hey, just FYI, there's an adjustment that we'd like to make to where the board dedicated some of those dollars. That same sort of process is kind of what you're looking for here, is really the board having general oversight to kind of set a plan for us. And then as that plan adjusts and changes, you'll be informed and then come back for updates as it goes. But right now, it's not as useful to us as we need it to be in order to be asking this other question. So we have to expand its use in order to do the thing, to dedicate the additional dollars towards some of the things in the CIP budget. So eventually we can make the 159.8 work versus the 149.8 that's in the question.
You know, I just want to make sure that what we originally set it aside for is what we're going to use the money for first and foremost.
Yep.
These other things are fine, and I understand that. I just don't want to broaden it at the expense of what we originally set out to do.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and that is in there still to replace the turf. That
Yeah.
was exactly where we started, was we knew that was gonna be an upcoming expense, and part of our financial challenge before was not planning ahead for some of those types of things. So that is in there right now, in that structure and in that plan, no intention to change that.
Steve has something to say. Brandon, could you switch Steve over?
Exactly right. We, a couple of things. One is that any project that we still fund out of this, we will follow all the board procedures in terms of purchasing. And the other is that the first projects that we will fund out of this Fund 46 will be the field replacements at the West Allis Athletic Complex.
And then they'll need
That
to
was
be-
the original goal, and that has not changed.
Yep.
That's good to
And
hear.
then that field replacement has a lifespan of every, I think it's 8 to 10 years or whatnot. So then we'll have to talk about over the time, how do we build back up, whether it's Fund 46 or another source, in order to adjust so that we can continue to keep that field the way it needs to be.
Any other questions? So this, I presume, will be an action item, is it next week?
That is the intention, assuming that we have general support from the board to move in that direction for next week.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I think it makes sense to expand the use, and when we created the fund, we did it with the intention of, well, we had to put something down, and that's why we put the turf fields, because we knew that was gonna be a big expense. But we always had the intention to expand it to other things that we knew we were gonna have to do, so we're just now at that point of doing that, so that makes sense to me.
that's a good sign, right?
That's exciting.
That's a good sign,
Yes.
yes.
It's a good
That's
sign.
part of
that-
our story we should probably tell.
Yes,
That we're
for
ahead of
sure.
our budget.
All right, so, no other questions on that, we can move on. Is there another, I believe there's another part of this? No? Yes? Capital Improvement Trust Fund, draft referendum ballot question.
I think we covered it all.
I think we did.
So, I guess I do have a question. So, there was some discussion about we have the 5 million and 5 million, 5 million from the building sale. That's in Fund 49 though, not Fund 46. I wanna make sure that, so the building sale money got put into Fund 49,
49,
correct?
yes.
So the almost $6 million in this fiscal year does not include the building sale money. So the money that we're looking to use, the $10 million that we're putting forward is 5 million from ESSER 3, correct?
Yep.
And 5 million from Fund 49, from the building sale. Is that correct?
So I think,
As you, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Steve, you could probably mention this, but I think we have the Fund 49 money available, but we're also allowing Fund 46 funds set aside to also be part of that 5 million. So we have that flexibility, and we'll work with the board on that 5 million. Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have the 49 money, and this 46 would be authorizing that as well, if we set aside those funds.
Say
That's
again.
correct.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we don't have no intention for the Fund 49 money. We might use it, because obviously we can't use all the money from Fund 46 because there's not enough
Right.
to do both the turf fields
Yep.
and the 5 million for putting towards the building sale, or new
But
building.
we could put more money into Fund 46 at some point down the road and use that money for what we're looking for, potentially.
Yes, so the
If
intention, we put
we have some
325
ins-
a year in our budget, we budget 325 a year to go into Fund 46, and that would continue.
So let's say that we get like 10 million in Fund 46, we take 5 million out and use it instead of the Fund 49 is probably the way I read it, right?
Correct. Yeah, you could use both funds, and it gives us that latitude to make the correct decision on how to finance it. So it could be that we put more money in 46, that frees it up to be used instead of the set aside in 49. So. And then another part of it is we have the availability of ESSER funds. Federal law allows us to use ESSER funds for construction projects. So we will be coming up with a plan that will allow for that,
but we have to be careful with, there are certain provisions in the federal law that, for example, it has to be COVID-related. So that, for example, HVAC type things that deal with social distancing. So we can't just use it however we want. There has to be a link. And there are some other federal provisions included with that law. So we will come up with a plan to either maybe dedicate some of it as construction, or we may, for example, maybe we have curriculum that we need to cover, so that may free up general funds to put into 46 to cover this. So we have the ability to come up with a plan to meet the $10 million goal through ESSER funds and through other ways of freeing up the funds to be able to cover this. So hopefully that answers your question.
Right.
And then Steve, I'm sorry, did you have anything to add? I don't know if he heard me.
I don't see any reaction.
No.
Yeah, the only other thing I was gonna add is that we're also viewing, with the ESSER dollars maybe being the slight exception, because there is some timing requirements as to when they need to be expended, we're viewing generally at least $5, if not $10 million to be the last $10 million spent.
Okay.
So also think of this through the lens of a 3 to 4 year project. By the time we design, engineer, bid, et cetera, these hypothetically, again, ESSER may be excluded if we have to meet a time constraint, would be the last 10. So there's multiple additional operating budgets ahead, whereby you as a board could decide how to manage your budget and your different funding sources to bolster as you see fit.
Yeah, and some of what, the adjustment of what's allowable under Fund 46 are some of the things that Steve's puts into the general $1.2 million that we dedicate to capital improvement projects. Like, some of the things that are listed in there are the things that he uses that money for every year. So there could be, it's the movement of some of the money to access some of what's in Fund 46 to do some of those things, which yet again frees up your Fund $10 to dedicate towards the projects that you have going on at the present moment. And when you look at that third page, where it has the $159.8 million, oh, that's a lot to say out loud. When you look at the $21.9 million dedicated to soft costs, like, that's that tail end of the project, where you're talking about furniture, you're talking about equipment for classrooms, you're talking about all of those things. So that allows us to plan ahead for where those logically most fit into the budget at that time, assuming that we're utilizing the Fund 49 dollars, as well as then have some flexibility with the Fund 46 monies as well.
And if you're the optimist, you assume you don't have to spend them. We're
Right.
gonna be under budget,
'Cause
and
they're gonna be
that's some
under
other
budget.
nice
Oh, you heard
flexibility
them
this
say it
offers you.
here, Right, so.
MATC.
So
We're
that
gonna be
could be,
spending
and
a lot
then
of
getting,
money on that.
also, the board has asked us to pursue contributing partners to some of those pieces as well, which we will continue to do in hopes that some of those dollars at the tail end of the project can be reduced for us as a school system.
Questions? Heather, if you have any questions, let me know. So, next Monday, at this point, this referendum question, this language, would be on for approval for us. So how do we all feel about that? Are we
Yeah.
okay with it? If it shows up, are we gonna vote in favor of it? Do we have concerns or questions that we still would like to have answered about it? Because I wanna make sure that we as a board are on the same page as far as this referendum question goes. That we understand it, and understand the purpose of it, and what it means that we're gonna be asking the community for.
Yeah. I think, I think we've done our due diligence. I think we put a lot of time and effort, and I feel like we're doing what's best for our stakeholders. This is not about building some great brand-new school just so we have a new school. This is to fit our needs and to right size, and to, as a community member stated earlier today, we have buildings that we're not gonna be using, so we need to figure out what we're gonna do with those buildings, and, now it's how we tell our story and how we sell our story. I think we've done a good job coming together. I think we have a great plan. I think it's a plan that's a win-win for everybody. So I feel I feel confident in the question. I feel confident in what we want to put into the game. I feel confident in the work that we've done. Now, the last piece is how do we sell the story? So I'm looking forward to that piece.
What does this work out to? So this question, the 149.8, what does it work out to, the 100,000, 200,000, 300,000? Do we have that?
If memory serves me correct, it's $1.12. I think it's somewhere around that number, Steve. Does that sound about right? About $1.10, $1.12 per 100,000. Sorry, per $1,000 of value. So $112 per $100,000 of property value. I could be off a little there, but I think it's right around that general number.
Okay. That question I know will be asked.
It would be just lower than it was by 2 cents, if I remember correctly, than what it was a year or two ago.
Okay. So we'll have that information for the referendum question on.
Yeah, the referendum, it will not actually appear in the question
No, no,
itself,
yeah, right.
but it will be a big part of the communication plan, is gonna be communicating the estimated cost on a per household, per $100,000 basis, to your taxpayers. That's critically important.
And also for the question on Monday, just
Fair.
so publicly it's stated at this point, this is the question we're asking, this is what we're asking of the community. And we as a board understand what that dollar amount actually is. Not just 149.8 million, but for 100,000, this is what we're actually asking the community to contribute. Heather, did you have any comments or anything that you wanted to provide? No? She's okay. All right, she's okay with it. Jeff?
Can I ask a question going back to the capital improvement plan?
Yes.
That just popped into my head. Steve, when you had the capital improvement plan, an attachment that has everything up to 2031, 32, are those in today's dollars or taking into account what inflation could be?
That's a great question. What I did is I started out with a dollar amount for 2022, 23, so next fiscal year, and then I added 4% year over year.
Okay. I was gonna ask,
Whoa.
I was gonna ask that question during the presentation and I forgot, and now I remembered.
All right, great. Oh, yeah.
I was a little low. 118 is the estimated, $1.18 or $118 was the estimate right now, based on the last presentation.
So if you can do math, 100,000 times, so it'd be $118 for $100,000, then you just
236.
do the math.
And we'll put a nice little chart together that shows house, annual cost, monthly cost, et cetera, for everybody.
Great, great.
Yeah, are we unique in, as far as like our property and what we're trying to do here compared to other school districts? I'm curious. I never asked that through this process about how we, have these properties and right sizing and that we're looking to.
Do you want me to speak?
Sure.
So I used to work in Racine Unified School District, and we did a massive right-sizing plan that was a $598 million of construction. We went out for referendum, and it passed by 5 votes. And it's now before the Supreme Court for a decision. So we had a facility master plan. We were consolidating schools. We were trying to find out and right-size schools so that we're minimum 3-section school. We were actually going to a different middle school model because huge middle schools scared our public, so they wanted a more manageable middle school. So we had this comprehensive plan. It's very exciting for that community and we wanted to get everything done. So we did go through that whole process, but we haven't implemented it yet because the Supreme Court hasn't finalized the results of the referendum.
I would say you're absolutely not alone in this situation. Waukesha has closed schools, and they're in the process of discussing a potential additional elementary school closure. Oshkosh is making a major investment to consolidate and begin the first phase of right-sizing their school district. La Crosse is having this exact conversation about considering one high school right now. Sheboygan has closed schools. Neenah is proposing a school closure shortly. So even just regionally, districts in a similar situation to yours, right? Yeah, probably top 30 student enrollment-wise. you're either a Dane County suburb and growing like crazy and joining that group, but the vast majority are not, that have been in that group historically have naturally had a decline in enrollment, and in turn, either through referendum or through simply closing schools, have had to go through the right sizing process.
Well, not specific, not saying that, but like how we're trying to find ways to putting 10 million of our money through these funds, properties that we are looking to sell and potentially, like, you know, are we having those conversations? I asked this a couple weeks ago of finding partners for some of, you know, like, you know, when we start telling our story, that we can say, well, this is kind of some conversations we've had about this property here and this potential use for this property over there, which might, as a taxpayer and a person in this community, say, oh my God, that would be really great if that came to fruition, and that might help me say yes.
Yeah, every district has a unique set of financial circumstances. So many districts, if you think of a rural district, they're not going to have a property that's worth $6 million or whatever you were able to sell your property for. So that's a unique aspect of your financial situation. Nina passed a $115 million referendum and is doing $180 million worth of work, because they have a very different situation in terms of their OPEB liabilities and all the debt that they took on. And so every district is different. I think telling the story that is specific to your district and your situation is most important. And the work you have done to stabilize your budget situation is phenomenally impressive. And I think we have to continue to share that with the community as we go through this process. And again, it'll be your message, but bringing anecdotal stories of other districts that are going through similar experiences is surely part of helping people who have maybe never been through this process before understand that they're not alone. Maybe it doesn't make them feel better, but there isn't anything you have done to create this situation. It's the nature of being a district of your size and experiencing the decline in enrollment, not due to your efforts, but due to changes in family philosophy and family living decisions.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Brendan.
I have one last question. For the buildings that we're hoping to get with the school, what's the expected longevity of a facility like this? Like, are we looking at another 100 years that we're looking at never having to build another building, or is this longevity of something like this 25 years and we're going to have to be coming back to the, you know, the drawing board for it?
Yeah, I will say the quality of the considered construction is a 50-plus year solution, leaving all the consumable things out of it, right? Roofs and all that stuff. So take all the consumable parts of a building out, and these are 50-plus year buildings in terms of the quality of construction very easily.
I think, I don't want to speak for Steve, but I think he would quickly remind you that this facilities will still need facilities maintenance work, even though you don't need a new building, but you're still going to need to do roofing and pavements and tuck pointing and things like that. So.
Right, and some of that maintenance is how we've stretched the life of the buildings. That's been a comment from the builders and the architects all the way through, is some pretty impressive shock around how well our team has been able to manage these facilities so that they are in the shape that they're in today. And that work is done by our facilities team, which will continue with new buildings or other buildings that we have.
Sure, yeah, no, and I was kind of wondering, because we have had the comment of how much per pupil this will cost, but that's looking at a single year. If we look at it over the lifetime, and so if we're planning at 25 years or 50 years or 75 years, the cost per pupil goes down tremendously the longer this facility lasts.
There's decades upon decades of students of the school district that will be going to this high school.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions? So we're good?
I feel
Yep.
we're here.
Next Monday, all right?
Let's do it.
All right, well, seeing no other questions, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.